People of Reddit, what's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you? 3 months ago I went to the doctor for bloating and constipation. The symptoms had been coming and going over the previous 2 months and then finally getting progressively worse in the last couple weeks. One CT scan later, I learned I have advanced ovarian cancer. Terrifying statistics regarding prognosis. Living with gratitude every day that I have access to excellent care and tons of loving support from family, friends, and neighbors. I started having to make doctor apps for pain on the left side of my abdomen. I was told it was just constipation and was given a stool softener, which didn't help. I went back a few weeks later and was given a laxative and was supposed to use that to reset my bowels. During the middle of that process I became very bloated. When I was 12 or so my family went camping at a campground in the Shenandoah Valley. Not the middle of nowhere but kind of an isolated mountain town. I went to take our dog for a walk out on a trail at the edge of the campground with some pretty dense woods all around. My dog suddenly froze and wouldn't budge. Right as I heard some rustling in the woods behind me, I spun around to see some random, middle-aged guy emerge from the trees and begin to approach me. I was too surprised to really react. And my dog was super old at that point so he didn't do much other than freeze. Then the guy goes, "Hey, this is going to seem like a weird question, but could you come back to my cabin and help me cut my hair? I can't see the back of my neck and could really use your help." I quickly said something like, "No sorry, my parents are waiting on me for dinner so I should get going." He just shrugged and walked back into the woods. I made it back to our campsite safely and told my parents. I had thought maybe he was a campground employee, but only after my parents' reaction did I realize how weird the interaction was. They immediately went to the campground staff and told them what happened. They searched the campground but never found the guy. I still get goosebumps thinking about it. That's creepy as hell. But just imagine if that was a genuine offer. Might as well ask. No shoot, they ran off, Jim. That's creepy as frick. My wife was 30+ weeks pregnant when her stomach began to hurt to the point she really couldn't talk. It was extremely intense pain. The hospital, one of the best in the world, had a difficult time figuring out what it was so they sent her down to imaging. By the time she came back to the room, they realized my wife and the baby were really starting to struggle. They did an emergency C-section and realized most of my wife's intestines were black and dead. It ended up being intestinal malrotation. My wife was apparently born with her intestines not fully anchored and supported so they were more prone to twist. We had no idea. Our baby passed away and my wife almost did. That was scary. Still is. Especially if she gets a stomachache, it's difficult not to think of the worst case scenario. Also losing a child is scary, so I guess I got 2 for this question. Yay me. Edit. Thank you to everyone for the kind words. I'm so sorry for your loss. I was in bed when I heard a rustle. Looked around. Saw nothing. Lay back down. Heard a louder rustle. Looked around. Looked under the bed. Lay back down with my heart in my throat. Something large landed on my face and chest. It was a stupid poster over my bed. To this day I'm proud I didn't soil myself. This has happened to me as well. Except I opened my eyes when I heard the rustle to see Wonder Woman's face rapidly floating down to mine. A customer asked me out. I said no. And he left the store very upset. Any woman who works in retail has had this experience. Sadly this is nothing unusual. But then he waited by the front door, the only exit, occasionally looking in at me through the glass windows. 45 minutes later, he was still there. I was the only one on the floor that night, so he knew I had to close the store alone. I had to call the manager to come in and help me close. While I was waiting for the manager, I started to second guess myself. Maybe he was just waiting for a ride. But as soon as my manager arrived, the customer got into his parked car and left. Chilling. You just don't know what might have happened. Glad you played it safe. Some guy in the hotel room next to mine shot himself and the round made it through the wall and into my luggage. Edit. While this is definitely going to be my top comment on the next Reddit recap, maybe I'll do an ammo sometime. I am so sorry you had to experience that. How are you holding up now? My wife hemorrhaging blood while pregnant with our daughter, not knowing for over an hour if either one would make it. My wife did after 2 blood transfusions. Our daughter did not. I'm so sorry for your loss. Sad but relieved face with sweat. In college one weekend, I crashed at a friend's house and woke up early in the morning, 7 AM or so. I decided to walk 5 minutes back to my dorm to get some more sleep in my own bed. As I got close to my dorm, I noticed a man following me. No one else is out walking. He doesn't look college aged either. I start fast walking to the front door. It was after the night security guard, aka paid students, left, so there was no one at the door. I still had to swipe my aid card to get in and he was very close behind me. I swipe my card and he sneaks in before the door fully closed and relocked. I bolted up the one flight of stairs to my floor and down a 80-foot hallway to my room. As I fumbled with my keys, I saw the man enter the walkway, looking left and right to see where I went. I slipped in my room and locked my door. I didn't fall back asleep that morning. Edit. Some more info. This happened like 5 months after a guy broke into my dorm room while my roommate and I slept, just watching us. He left eventually. I don't recall how much time passed between waking up and seeing a person walk into our room, thinking it was my roommate, and when they left, since I dozed off. I called campus security for that, not for the creepy guy who followed me. Not sure why I didn't. Lastly, a few years later, right after I graduated, some man was caught inside my old dorm attempting to break into rooms. He was old and had a white beard. He had a knife on him too. They called him Santa Claus in the school newspaper. I used to work security at a high-end apartment complex for foreign exchange students. I was working the night shift one night when I noticed on the CCTV that an Asian girl I recognized from the site got dropped off by a taxi to the side of the building. As she was walking around, a man approached her and started talking to her whilst blocking the path she was headed down. Was already on the worst date of my life with a barely coherent guy who smelled like he hadn't showered in a week. I was dropping him off at his bike after a glass of wine at a fancy wine bar where he knew a guy who wasn't working that night. So guess who has 2 thumbs and paid for both drinks? Thumbs up. Thumbs up. This guy. Suddenly dude yells look out, and I slammed the brakes. I missed getting demolished by inches by a speeding SUV blasting through a stop sign and across an arterial road at 70+ miles per hour. I later found out that it crashed into someone's house shortly thereafter. Anyways, I was shaking like a leaf after that. That guy saved both our lives. Wish I could say it was a meet cute, but I never saw him again. Real quick, from him being a douche to we'll call it even and have a good life. I grew up in a very redneck area. My much older brother, worked for a neighbor on his sawmill. The neighbor decided he didn't need to pay what had earned. Had been in the system, so he knew his rights and went to the labor board. They made the neighbor pay him. The neighbor, enraged, recruited 2 of his buddies to begin a harassment campaign against our family. The 2 buddies parked themselves at the top of our long driveway and started using our home as target practice. I was there with my younger siblings and my mother. I was 6. Meanwhile, the neighbor, in his big logging truck, followed my father's small truck the half-hour drive into town, all the while trying to drive my father and off the road. He somehow managed to shoot out the back window of my father's truck, but didn't hit my father, or the other windows. My father was able to remain on the road and drove to the police station. Back at home, we were trying to stay safe while these 2 crazy men were taking potshots at our house and the surroundings. In retrospect, I don't know if they were actually trying to kill us or just terrorize us. They achieved the latter. The police came out, but these 2 guys took off and weren't charged. The neighbor had to replace the back window in my father's truck, and the police deemed that restitution enough. He wasn't charged. 10 years later, that neighbor entered a feud with another neighbor, a single mother who he thought insulted his wife. He managed to kill her by driving her vehicle off the road with that same logging truck. Did he know the cops or something? My ex used to stalk me. He was abusive when we dated. He would force himself on me sexually and beat me up. The first time I refused to have sex with him, he grabbed me by my hair, pulled me up the stairs, and threw back down. I had a nasty bruise on my ribs forever after that. His mum used to let him do it to me too. She would hide out in her room, and when I left she would come down and say goodbye to me. The abusive relationship was scary, but what came afterwards scared me far more. It still affects me to this day. He started off texting me from other phone numbers. He was always texting this same crazy freaking story he made up about us being wolf cubs and falling in love. Then he began texting me to say he hoped my new boyfriend would torture me and kill me. He went into graphic details about what he wanted done to me. Eventually the text stopped and I was relieved. And then he started making fake social medias, like 5 at a time on Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, even Reddit. He would message me from all of the accounts and spam my phone with sick messages about finding me and killing me. I had moved at this point so he didn't know where I lived, but he would keep sending my old address and my parents' home address over and over again. The social medias all stopped one day out of nowhere and I thought that was it for good. And then he showed up at my place of work. I hid upstairs in the restaurant until he left. He never came by again. The social media accounts starting popping up again until they stopped once more. At this point I had switched jobs and one day while I was working at the deli counter I saw him walk in all frantic. He was all over the store staring every employee down. I ran to the break room when I saw him walk in. He didn't leave for nearly half an hour and my co-worker said he did about 15 laps around the store. I switched jobs again soon after and moved again. The social media accounts began to start up again and I ended up removing myself from the internet for almost a year. My phone number had been changed already so I got no texts or any social media messages. It's been about a year. I've since rejoined my favorite social media networks with all new accounts and as private as possible. I don't even use my real name online and I've made sure to block all of his friends and his known accounts that he's made. I haven't had a scare from him in about a year and I've moved once again to live with my current boyfriend of 3 years nearly 2 hours away from my ex. Very few people know where I've gone and I want it to stay that way. I never want to know the fear of him ever again, but it's not that simple. I always lock all of my windows and doors and double check my surroundings constantly, even when I'm out shopping or running around. I almost never add people on social media unless I've given them my handles personally. In a way I still feel sheltered and like I can't fully express myself online without the fear of him finding me, but I'm better off now than I was before. Would highly recommend documenting all of this and filing a restraining order against him. Not a lawyer and this is not legal advice. I moved to a new city 21F for college and was trying to make friends. There was a comic book store near my apartment and I signed up for a D&D group. I used my first name, phone number, and a gamer email address. The store employee and I had some casual conversation on favorite comic book series. We both really liked Batman so we talked for a good 15 to 20 minutes before I purchased a book with my credit card. Around 9 PM the employee texted me like, "Hey, this is store employee. I really enjoyed talking with you today." I was a little unnerved by this because the only way he has my phone number was because of the D&D sign-up sheet. I didn't really want to respond at first, but I didn't want to appear unfriendly and not be invited to the D&D group, so I responded, "Yeah, I'm glad to have found comic book store. Can't wait to meet the D&D group. See you next time." He proceeded to text me a few more times that night, but I didn't respond. He tries to add me on social media. He got my last name from my credit card. The final straw was I was on my college campus after hours studying in the library. I'm packing up my things when he calls me. I look at the phone, hit ignore, and put my phone on the table. He then appears from behind a fricking bookshelf 2 feet away and has the balls to ask, "Hey, why did you ignore my call?" I literally had this feeling, like a wave of cold water from my head to my toes, and I broke out in a cold sweat. I managed to put on my professional retail smile and was like, "Oh my god. Hi, sorry I ignored your call. I was just trying to pack up and head home for the day. How are you?" I was talking very girly and loudly because I honestly just hoped I can either make him happy enough not to murder me or to get someone's attention. BC, I'm being loud in a library. He was oddly calm and he was smiling, but not in a warm way. "Why haven't you been returning my texts?" Without missing a beat. "I have to pay for my data. I have the cheapo Walmart plan. Look at this phone. It's ancient. Anyway, I can't wait for D&D on Friday though. I am so ready to socialize and relax." Then he talked about the campaign and roles that are open, etc. He asked to walk me to my car and I no thank you. My boyfriend is coming to meet me in a few minutes. His face like turned for a minute and I was so scared. I remember kicking myself. BC, it was a straight up lie, but I didn't know what to say to have him not follow me to my car. Then like IDK if God is real or what. One of my male classmates walked by and I took my chance. OMG fellow classmate. Hey, 1 minute. I turned to store employee. Hey, sorry, I need to catch up with classmate. I'll see you Friday. And I bolted for my classmate. I grabbed his arm like we were best friends and I just started talking about class. I walked us outside and he got me to my car. It was pitch black outside. I was so scared but the classmate was so sweet. He got in my car, chilled for a bit and I drove him to his car. I never went back to the comic book store. I still go to conventions and I saw the store employee a few times but we never spoke again. You prove to the creep you can defend yourself, have safety net and can connect for help. Amazing job. I hate this guy so much now. It is for creeps like this we lack females' perspective at RPG tables.